The last light of a dying star reflected off the Nexari dreadnought's biomechanical hull, its living metal surface pulsing with an ominous purple glow. Around the massive vessel, smaller scout ships moved like remora fish, their tentacle-like appendages tasting the void for signs of prey. This was the sight that greeted the Galactic Council's emergency session, a real-time projection hovering above their circular chamber. Ambassador Kell of the Pyraxian Federation gripped the edges of their hover platform until their four-fingered hands turned pale. "They're earlier than expected," they whispered, voice trembling. The tribute wasn't due for another cycle. The chamber, normally filled with the subtle sounds of 200 species breathing different atmospheres, had fallen silent. Even the methane-breathing Hylaxians had stopped their usual bubbling commentary. High Counselor Ven, their crystalline form reflecting the harsh light of the emergency beacons, floated to the center of the chamber. "We have received their demands," they announced, each word falling like a death sentence. "The Nexari world ship requires a neural network upgrade." The words sparked immediate chaos. Every species knew what that meant. The Nexari would demand an entire civilization's neural patterns to power their living ships. It had happened before, entire species reduced to empty shells, so their collective consciousness could feed the Nexari's insatiable hunger for processing power. "How many?" asked the Myraxian representative, their bioluminescent patterns flashing distress signals. 5 billion sentient minds," Ven replied, their crystal surface clouding with emotion. "They will accept no less." The chamber erupted again. Some representatives began calculating their population numbers, others already preparing defensive arguments for why their species should be spared. The Artaxians, having already lost half their colonies to previous Nexari demands, began their death prayers. "We must draw lots," declared Ven, activating the ancient protocol holograms. "As we have done before, the algorithm will select based on population distribution and neural compatibility. May the void have mercy on." A sharp alarm cut through the chamber's cacophony. The main display shifted, showing a new sensor reading from the outer rim. A single ship, small by galactic standards, moving at speeds that shouldn't be possible for its primitive design. "Classification unknown," reported the security eye. "Hull configuration suggests recent FTL capability. Weapons signatures, unable to analyze. Power source, unable to analyze." The council chamber filled with confused murmurs. In a galaxy where every species' technology was built on the same fundamental principles, an unclassifiable ship was more than an anomaly. It was an impossibility. The vessel's trajectory became clear. It was heading directly toward the Nexari fleet. Either its crew was unaware of the danger, or they're powering up weapons, the security AI announced, its tone shifting to something almost like interest. "Energy patterns don't match any known configuration." Ambassador Kell leaned forward, their scientific background momentarily overriding their fear. "Look at the scale. That ship can't be carrying more than a few hundred crew members. What do they think they can?" The rest of their words were lost as the unknown ship opened fire. The council chamber watched in stunned silence as energy weapons of impossible design tore through the Nexari's biological shields like they didn't exist. The smaller ship moved with precision that seemed to defy physics, each maneuver calculated to maximum effect. High Counselor Ven's crystal surface had become completely transparent, a sign of extreme shock in their species. "Get me everything we have on unknown species from that sector," they ordered. "Find out who they are, what they are, and—" They paused, watching as another Nexari scout ship erupted in a flash of bioelectric fire, and whether they're taking applications for allies. For the first time in recent memory, the Galactic Council chamber filled with something other than fear, hope, small and fragile, but growing with each impossible victory they'd witnessed on the main display. They didn't yet know the word human, but they would never forget it after this day. Commander Jack Reynolds stood at the viewport of the ESS Hyperion, his calloused hand pressed against the reinforced glass as he watched the alien distress signals paint the void in shades of red and blue. 25 years in the Earth Space Force hadn't prepared him for this moment. Humanity's first contact was supposed to be a milestone of scientific achievement. Instead, they'd stumbled into a galaxy-wide hostage situation. Another transmission coming through. "Sir," Lieutenant Sarah Cooper called from her communication station, her voice tight with controlled anger. Same pattern as the others. Some kind of tribute demand. Reynolds turned from the viewport, his weather-worn face illuminated by the holographic displays that filled the Hyperion's bridge. The ship, Earth's first and only warship, had been built to defend human colonies that didn't even exist yet. Instead, here they were, watching alien civilizations fall to their knees before these. "Nexari." "Dr. Wright," Reynolds called to the ship's chief medical officer, who was studying the biological readings from the enemy fleet. "What are we looking at?" Marcus Wright looked up from his station, running a hand through his graying hair. "It's unlike anything we've seen, Jack. They're ships. They're not just biological. They're networked, like a massive nervous system spanning their entire fleet. The amount of processing power required to maintain that kind of integration. That's what the tributes are for," Cooper interjected, her fingers flying over her console as she decoded more transmissions. "They're not taking resources, they're taking people. Entire species, their minds harvested to power these living ships." Reynolds felt his jaw tighten. The Hyperion's experimental weapons had never been tested in real combat. The quantum destabilizers, the gravity pulse cannons, Earth's best scientists had called them too unpredictable, too dangerous to use. But standing here, watching civilization after civilization bow to these cosmic bullies, "Lieutenant Chen," he called to his tactical officer, "what's the status of our weapon systems?" "All systems nominal, sir," Chen responded, her hands already moving to combat stations. "But the simulations show our shields won't hold against their bioelectric weapons for more than a few minutes." Reynolds nodded, moving to the center of the bridge. Around him, his crew of 300, the best Earth had to offer, waited for his decision. They'd trained for every scenario humanity could imagine. "But this, Dr. Wright," he said, an idea forming. "You said their ships are like a nervous system. What happens to a nervous system when it encounters something it's never seen before?" Wright's eyes widened as he caught on. "It either adapts or it goes into shock. And their technology, advanced as it is, has never encountered human weapons before," Reynolds continued, a grim smile forming. "Lieutenant Chen, begin charging the quantum destabilizers. Cooper, send a message to Earth Command. Let them know we've made first contact, and we're about to make one hell of a first impression." The bridge crew moved with practiced efficiency, but Reynolds could see the tension in their movements. They'd all seen the recordings of what happened to species that resisted the Nexari. Entire planets reduced to empty husks, their populations processed into living computer components. "Sir," Cooper called out, her voice different now, "I'm picking up a new transmission. They're demanding Earth's location. They've detected us." Reynolds straightened his uniform, looking at each member of his bridge crew. These men and women represented the best of humanity, not just their training or technology, but their unwavering spirit in the face of impossible odds. "Send them our response," he ordered, his voice carrying the weight of every human who'd ever stood against tyranny. "Tell them that if they want to find Earth, they'll have to get through us first. And unlike everyone else in this galaxy, we don't bow to bullies." The Hyperion's engines hummed to life, her experimental weapons charging with a sound unlike anything the galaxy had ever heard. As they moved to engage the Nexari fleet, Reynolds made a silent promise to every species watching. Today, the galaxy would learn that sometimes the most dangerous thing in the universe isn't the biggest ship or the most advanced technology. It's a human with nothing left to lose and everything to fight for. The Nexeri battle formation emerged from subspace like a living wall of nightmares, their bioships arranged in the famous Death's Hand pattern that had broken the will of 1,000 civilizations. Tendrils of living metal extended from their hulls, crackling with bioelectric energy that could tear through standard shields like paper. "That's a lot of ugly," Lieutenant Cooper muttered from her station, her hand steady despite the grotesque display before them. Commander Reynolds watched the enemy formation with the calculated focus of a career military officer. "Dr. Wright, what are those energy readings?" "Their bioships are linking up," Wright replied, his medical scanner's holographic display showing complex neural patterns, creating a single nervous system. "In theory, it makes them unstoppable. Perfect coordination, instant response time." "In theory," Reynolds repeated, a slight smile playing at his lips. "Lieutenant Chen, remember those war games we ran against the computer? The ones where it predicted every move?" Chen's eyes lit up with understanding. "The Chaos Gambit, sir." "Exactly. Sometimes, the best strategy is no strategy at all. Prepare to fire on my mark." The Nexeri ships moved with eerie synchronization, their formation shifting like the fingers of a closing fist. Bioelectric weapons charge, creating webs of energy between their vessels. "They're broadcasting something," Cooper announced. "Standard surrender demands, threatening to process our neural patterns." "Wait." She paused, double-checking her readings. "Sir, they're laughing at us. Their command ship is actually transmitting the equivalent of laughter." Reynolds' expression hardened. "Let's see how long that humor lasts." "All hands, battle stations. Chen, initialize the quantum destabilizers." "Right, start recording every scrap of data you can get. Earth's going to want to know how this plays out." The Hyperion's experimental weapons hummed to life, creating harmonics that made the deck plates vibrate. The ship's AI calculated firing solutions that looked like pure chaos, random vectors, unpredictable patterns, the kind of attack that no linked neural network could possibly predict because it followed no logic. Receiving their final warning, Cooper reported. They're actually confused why we haven't surrendered yet." "Let's give them something new to be confused about," Reynolds said. "All weapons, fire." The Hyperion's first salvo looked like madness. Quantum destabilizers fired in seemingly random directions, their energy signatures shifting and phasing in ways that defied standard combat logic. The Nexeri's perfect formation held for a moment, their linked neural network trying to calculate a response to this impossible attack pattern. That moment of confusion was all the Hyperion needed. The quantum rounds phased through the bioship's outer defenses like they didn't exist, their unstable energy states ignoring the very laws of physics that the Nexeri relied upon. Where the rounds hit, living metal simply stopped being matter. "Direct hits," Chen called out, her voice rising with excitement. "Their adaptive shielding can't compensate. They've never seen anything like this." The Nexeri formation fractured as ships began losing chunks of their living hull to quantum destabilization. Their neural network, faced with input it couldn't process, began to overload. "They're panicking," Wright reported, watching the biological readings spike. "Their linked nervous system is working against them. The pain and confusion from the damaged ships is feeding back through the entire fleet." Reynolds leaned forward in his chair. "Push the advantage. Chen, switch to gravity pulse cannons. Let's show them what happens when you corner a human." The Hyperion's secondary weapons opened up, creating localized gravity wells that tore the already damaged bioships apart. The Nexeri's perfect coordination had become their greatest weakness. Unable to process these new forms of attack, their linked ships began to turn on each other in confusion. "Sir," Cooper called out, her voice filled with disbelief. They're retreating. The Nexari are actually retreating." The bridge crew watched as the remnants of the once mighty battle group fled into subspace, leaving behind a debris field of twisted living metal and shattered biological technology. Reynolds stood, straightening his uniform. "Send a message to the Galactic Council," he ordered. "Tell them that the ESS Hyperion sends its regards, and that Earth is open to diplomatic relations with any species that's tired of being bullied." As the message was transmitted, Reynolds looked at the debris field one more time. Humanity had just announced its presence to the galaxy in the most dramatic way possible. He just hoped they were ready for what would come next. The Hyperion's medical bay had never been so crowded. Dr. Marcus Wright moved between holographic displays showing captured Nexari biomatter, his eyes red from hours of continuous study. Around him, the ship's best scientists had transformed the medical bay into an impromptu research lab. "Look at this neural structure," he muttered, manipulating a 3D model of the alien tissue. "It's almost like they've evolved their technology to be an extension of their own nervous system." Commander Reynolds stood at the back of the lab, watching his crew work while processing the latest intelligence reports. The victory against the Nexari battle group had sparked something across the galaxy. Hope, yes, but also terror. The Nexari High Command had responded by dispatching their world ship, a living vessel the size of Earth's moon. "How long until it reaches Earth?" Lieutenant Cooper asked, her voice low as she handed him the latest subspace communications. 4 days, Reynolds replied, his expression grim. "And that's if they don't push their engines past normal limits. We've made them angry, Sarah. They're coming to make an example of us." The door slid open as Lieutenant Chen entered, carrying fresh sensor data from their long-range arrays. "Sir, the Council representatives are requesting another meeting. After our victory, 3 more species have pledged their support, but none of them have weapons that can hurt the Nexari," Reynolds finished. He'd seen the reports. Despite the growing alliance, Earth stood alone in terms of effective military power. "Commander," Dr. Wright's excited voice cut through the tension. "I need you to see this. All of you." The senior staff gathered around the central holographic display. Wright had overlaid images of human cancer cells with the Nexari biomatter structure. "Look at the similarity," he explained, his hands dancing through the holographic controls. "The way their technology integrates with biological systems, it's almost identical to how cancer cells hijack the body's natural processes." Reynolds leaned forward, his military mind already seeing the implications. "And we've been fighting cancer for centuries." "Exactly," Wright continued, pulling up more data. "Their entire fleet, including the world ship, is one massive organism. But like any organism, it should be susceptible to the right kind of treatment." Cooper's eyes widened. "You want to give their world ship cancer?" "Not exactly," Wright said, a hint of professional pride in his voice. "I want to modify our medical nanites, the ones we use for targeted cancer treatment, to attack their biotechnology. Turn their greatest strength into a weakness." Lieutenant Chen stepped forward, her tactical training engaging. "The world ship's defenses are based on energy shields and matter detection. They'd never think to scan for medical-grade nanites." Reynolds walked around the display, studying the data from every angle. This was the kind of innovative thinking that had defined human military history, finding unconventional solutions when conventional warfare failed. "How long to modify the nanites?" he asked. 2 days, maybe 3, Wright replied. "But, Commander, we'd need to deploy them directly into the world ship's primary neural cluster. Anything less, and their repair systems might adapt." The implication hung heavy in the air. A direct attack on the world ship would be suicide, even with their advanced weapons. The Hyperion might get one shot, but they'd never survive long enough to confirm if it worked. Reynolds looked at each member of his senior staff, seeing the same determination in their eyes that he felt. They'd all known the risks when they volunteered for humanity's first deep space mission. "Start the modifications," he ordered, "and get me a secure channel to Earth Command. They need to know." He paused, looking at the holographic display of the approaching world ship. "They need to know that whatever happens next, humanity threw everything we had at them. We don't let bullies win. Not in our own solar system. And not in this galaxy." As his crew sprang into action, Reynolds remained at the display, watching the clock count down. They had 4 days to save Earth, and their only hope lay in convincing the most advanced species in the galaxy that sometimes the oldest solutions were the best ones. Red emergency lighting cast long shadows through the Hyperion's medical bay as Dr. Wright made the final adjustments to their modified nanites. 3 days of non-stop work had left dark circles under his eyes, but there was a fire in them that refused to die. "Show me the latest test results," Commander Reynolds ordered, standing among the holographic displays that showed their weapons' progress. The room had been converted into a strange hybrid of medical lab and weapons factory, with medical equipment repurposed in ways their designers had never intended. Wright gestured, and a new hologram sprang to life. "Watch this," he said, playing the recording of their latest test on a sample of Nexeri biomatter. The nanites swarmed through the living metal like microscopic predators, turning the alien technology's own growth mechanisms against it. "Beautiful," Lieutenant Chen whispered, her tactical training helping her appreciate the elegant destruction they were witnessing. "Their own biological processes will amplify the damage. But we still have to get close enough to deploy them," Cooper reminded everyone from her station, where she was monitoring the world ship's approach. "They're 12 hours out, and they've already launched probes into the solar system." Reynolds nodded, his expression grim. "Show me the deployment options again." The central hologram shifted to show the world ship's massive form. It dwarfed everything around it, a grotesque fusion of organic and mechanical engineering that had terrorized the galaxy for centuries. Red markers highlighted its known defensive systems, while yellow ones showed theoretical vulnerabilities. "We've identified 3 possible injection points," Chen explained, highlighting them in sequence. "The main neural cluster here, the secondary processing node here, and the tertiary control center here. The problem is, they're all deep inside the ship," Reynolds finished, "past multiple layers of living defenses that will react to any threat." He studied the display, years of military experience, looking for the one detail they might have missed. Wright stepped forward, adding another layer to the hologram. "There's something else. Look at these energy readings from their outer hull. The entire surface is like a massive sensory organ. It can detect and analyze any known form of matter or energy that touches it." "Any known form," Reynolds repeated slowly, "an idea forming. But what about something they've never seen before? Something so basic they wouldn't even think to look for it." The senior staff gathered closer as Reynolds outlined his plan. It was audacious, borderline insane, and exactly the kind of thinking that had defined human military history. "You want to hide our most advanced technology inside what looks like a primitive missile?" Cooper asked, her voice mixed with disbelief and admiration. "Not just one missile," Reynolds corrected. "We'll launch hundreds of them. Old-style nuclear warheads, kinetic penetrators, even some filled with simple chemical explosives. Their defenses will be looking for our quantum weapons, our gravity technology, while our real weapon hitches a ride in something so basic they won't even bother to stop it." Chen finished, a slow smile spreading across her face. "That's brilliant, sir. It's what humans do best," Wright added, already moving to modify their delivery system. "We take what works and use it in ways no one expects. While they're looking for the future, we'll hit them with the past. The next few hours were a blur of activity as the crew modified their weapon systems. Ancient missile designs were retrieved from the ship's database, while the medical team worked to ensure their nanite payload could survive the primitive delivery method. Reynolds watched his crew work, pride mixing with the weight of command. They had one shot at this. If they failed, Earth would pay the price for their defiance. But looking at the determination on every face around him, he knew they would give everything they had to make this work. "Sir," Cooper called out from her station. New reading from the outer system. "The world ship. It's accelerating. They'll be here in 8 hours." Reynolds straightened his uniform, his voice carrying to every corner of the lab. "Then we have 8 hours to remind the galaxy that sometimes the best way to fight the future is to remember the past. Let's show them what humanity can do when we're backed into a corner." The world ship emerged from subspace like a malevolent moon, its biomechanical surface writhing with tendrils of living metal. Earth's population watched through their telescopes as it eclipsed Saturn, its mass so great that it disrupted the ring system's delicate dance. "Multiple contacts," Lieutenant Cooper announced, her voice steady despite the horror on her screens. "They're launching escort ships. Count is over 1,000 and rising." Commander Reynolds stood at the Hyperion's tactical display, where Lieutenant Chen was marking enemy positions in real time. Their plan had seemed brilliant in theory. Now they had to execute it while facing the largest concentration of hostile forces in human history. "Status of the warheads?" Reynolds asked, his eyes never leaving the display. "All modified and ready," Dr. Wright reported from his station. "The nanites are stable inside the old missile casings. But, sir, we're seeing something strange in the world ship's bio readings." Before he could elaborate, the ship's AI issued a priority alert, the main screen filled with new data, as the world ship began broadcasting on all frequencies. "They're sending a message," Cooper translated, her face paling. They're showing us what they did to the last species that resisted them. The Artaxians." Her voice caught. "Sir, those images." "Focus, Lieutenant," Reynolds ordered firmly. "They want us afraid. That's always been their weapon. Fear, but they've never faced humans before." "Chen, begin launch sequence." A Hyperion's missile bays opened, revealing rows of what looked like ancient nuclear weapons. To any advanced scanning system, they would appear primitive, almost laughable against the world ship's defenses. "First wave ready," Chen reported. "Targeting solutions locked." Reynolds took a deep breath. Everything hinged on this moment. Launch. The first salvo of missiles streaked toward the world ship, their exhaust trails looking like something from an old war documentary. As predicted, the Nexari's advanced defenses barely registered them as threats. "They're taking the bait," Wright called out, monitoring the enemy's response. "Their outer hull is focusing on scanning for quantum signatures. They're completely ignoring the missile's physical structure." That's when the world ship did something unexpected. Its surface began to shift, opening massive pores that released clouds of biological spores into space. New threat detected. The ship's AI warned, "Unknown biological agent approaching." "They're not just fighting us," Wright realized, his medical training kicking in. "They're trying to infect Earth's biosphere. Those spores could rewrite the DNA of every living thing on the planet." Reynolds' expression hardened. "Launch second wave. All of them. Now." More missiles streaked from the Hyperion's bays as the ship maneuvered through the growing cloud of alien spores. The world ship's escort vessels moved to intercept, but they were focused on defending against the wrong type of weapon. First wave impact in 3, 2, 1. The nuclear detonations were just for show, creating a massive electromagnetic light show that obscured the real weapon. Billions of modified medical nanites, now streaming through the gaps created by the explosions. Nanite swarms have breached the outer hull, Wright reported excitedly. Yes, they're replicating using the ship's own biological material. The victory celebration was cut short as the world ship's response shook the Hyperion like a toy. Massive tentacles of living metal erupted from its surface, reaching for the human vessel. Evasive action, Reynolds ordered, gripping his chair as the ship rolled. Status of the nanites. Spreading faster than expected, Wright answered, his hands flying over his console. But sir, these readings. The world ship isn't just a vessel. It's their central neural network. The core of their entire civilization. Reynolds watched as sections of the massive ship began to deteriorate, its living metal turning against itself. They'd done more than just damage their enemy. They'd struck at the heart of the Nexeri Empire itself. Sir, Cooper's voice cut through the chaos. They're launching something. Some kind of data burst aimed directly at Earth's communications network. The world ship, even as it began to die, had one final card to play. The battle for humanity's survival was about to move from the physical realm to the digital. The bridge of the Hyperion erupted in chaos as warning signals flashed across every screen. The world ship's data burst had already breached Earth's primary firewalls, its alien code rewriting systems faster than anyone could track. Multiple systems compromised. Cooper shouted over the alarms. Power grids, communication networks, defense systems, they're all under attack. Commander Reynolds watched as the massive world ship continued to deteriorate, its biomechanical structure being devoured from within by their modified nanites. They'd won the physical battle, but the war was far from over. Dr. Wright, he called out, can we modify the nanites to fight in digital space? No need. Sir, a new voice interrupted. Dr. Sarah Martinez, the ship's chief computer scientist, emerged from the secondary command center. While medical was working on the biological weapon, my team was studying their digital architecture. The Nexeri made one critical mistake. They think like a hive mind, even in cyberspace. Reynolds gestured for her to continue as the ship shuddered from another impact with the world ship's dying tentacles. Their attack is perfect, synchronized, overwhelming, Martins explained, her hands dancing over a holographic interface. But it has no creativity, no adaptation. It's like a million soldiers all following the exact same playbook. And that's their weakness, Reynolds asked, already seeing where this was going. Exactly. Humans have been fighting cyber warfare against each other for centuries. We don't think in perfect patterns. We think in chaos, in innovation. She smiled. I've got 5,000 white hat hackers back on Earth already launching counterattacks, each one different, each one unpredictable. The main screen shifted to show Earth's digital infrastructure. Areas of red indicated Nexeri control, while blue showed human resistance. It looked like a virtual war zone. Sir, Cooper's voice cut through the discussion. Incoming transmission. It's from the Galactic Council. The secondary screen lit up with alien faces, not just council members, but representatives from dozens of previously subjugated species. They'd been watching the battle, and they'd learned from it. The Pyraxians are reporting successful deployment of modified medical nanites against their local Nexeri fleet, Cooper translated rapidly. The Myraxians have adapted our cyber defense strategies. The Artaxians are rising up in their mining colonies. Reynolds felt a surge of pride. Humanity hadn't just found a way to fight back. They'd shown the entire galaxy that it was possible. Martinez, he ordered, share everything we've got on cyber defense with our allies. Right, transmit the nanite specifications. Let's make this count. The next hour was a blur of activity. The Hyperion's crew coordinated with Earth's cyber warriors while simultaneously managing the spreading rebellion across the galaxy. Species that had been under Nexari control for centuries were learning to fight back using human tactics. "Sir," Chen called out from tactical, "the world ship structure is reaching critical failure. But these energy readings, they're trying something." The massive vessel's surface began to pulse with bioelectric energy, its dying systems attempting one final, desperate attack. "They're trying to upload their entire neural network," Martine shouted. "They want to preserve their consciousness in Earth's computer systems." Reynolds looked at his crew, saw the determination in their eyes. Without a word, they knew what had to be done. "Martinez, get me a direct link to their upload stream," he ordered. "Cooper, connect me to every human system fighting this battle." "Right, Chen. Keep that ship from making any physical last stands." The commander stood in the center of his bridge, his voice carrying the weight of every human who had ever fought against tyranny. "To all human forces, the enemy is making their final push. They think they can overwhelm us with perfect, synchronized attacks. Let's show them why humanity has survived every threat we've ever faced. Fight dirty. Fight creative. Fight free." Across the Earth and throughout the galaxy, human ingenuity was unleashed in all its chaotic glory. While the Nexari attacked in perfect, predictable patterns, humanity responded with computer viruses that mutated randomly, with algorithms that behaved like virtual guerrilla fighters, with defense systems that adapted and evolved in real time. The galaxy witnessed something it had never seen before. A species that turned its own internal conflicts, its constant competition and innovation, into an unconquerable defense against external threats. The age of fear was ending, and a new era was about to begin. 3 months after the Battle of Earth, Commander Jack Reynolds stood before the newly reformed Galactic Council. The chamber, once a place of fear and submission, now buzzed with the energy of 100 species planning their future together. "The last Nexari stronghold surrendered this morning," he reported, his voice carrying through the vast space. "Their remaining bioships have been neutralized using the modified nanite treatment. The threat is over." High Counselor Ven's crystalline form sparkled with colors that indicated deep emotion. "And yet here you stand, Commander, not to claim victory, but to propose something more." Reynolds nodded, activating a holographic display that filled the chamber. It showed the Hyperion, but modified, its design adapted to serve a new purpose. "The Nexari fell because they chose uniformity over adaptation," he explained. "They believed that perfect order was the key to power. Humanity proved them wrong, but not just through our weapons or tactics." The display shifted, showing medical facilities where Dr. Wright and his team were teaching alien species how to adapt human medical technology for their own biologies. Another image showed Dr. Martins working with a mixed group of species, developing new cyber defense systems that combine different approaches to problem solving. "We won because we share our knowledge," Reynolds continued. "Because we showed that true strength comes from diversity, from learning from each other. The Hyperion will be the first of a new class of ships. Not warships, but research vessels. Mobile centers of learning where different species can work together." The chamber erupted in discussion as representatives debated the proposal. Lieutenant Cooper, now Earth's official ambassador, stepped forward to stand beside her former commander. "The Nexari collected neural patterns to build better weapons," she added. "We propose collecting knowledge to build better understanding. Every species has something unique to offer. Let's learn from each other instead of fearing our differences." From her station at the back of the chamber, Lieutenant Chen monitored the security feeds. The galaxy was still a dangerous place, but the nature of those dangers had changed. Pirates and opportunists had tried to fill the power vacuum left by the Nexari's fall. They'd quickly learned that a galaxy united by choice was far more formidable than one united by fear. Dr. Wright, who had been working with the Artaxians to restore their neural functions after generations of Nexari suppression, presented his latest findings. "We're not just healing the damage done by the Nexeri," he reported. "We're discovering new ways to help each other grow. Every species' biology offers new insights, new possibilities." The council chamber's mood had shifted from debate to excitement as more representatives saw the potential. This wasn't just about preventing another empire from rising. It was about building something better. "There will be challenges," Reynolds acknowledged. "Disagreements, conflicts, times when our differences seem too great to bridge. But that's exactly why we'll succeed, because we don't seek perfect unity. We seek perfect balance between unity and individuality." High Counselor Ven rose, their crystal form now glowing with all the colors of the spectrum. "The motion is passed. The Galactic Research and Exchange Program will begin immediately, with Earth as a primary partner." As the chamber filled with sounds of approval, Reynolds looked at his crew. The people who had stood with him when the galaxy lived in fear. Cooper was already deep in diplomatic discussions. Chen was training a mixed-species security force, and Wright was excitedly sharing medical discoveries with a group of alien scientists. "You know," Dr. Martins said, joining him at the observer's platform, "when we first found that distress signal, I never imagined it would lead to this." Reynolds smiled, watching as the chamber below buzzed with the energy of 100 species planning a future together. "That's the thing about humans," he replied. "We never just solve a problem. We build something better from the solution." The stars outside the chamber window seemed brighter somehow, as if they too were celebrating the dawn of this new era. The galaxy had lived in fear until a single human warship appeared. Now it would live in hope, because that same ship had shown them a better way forward.